From the Grow Louisiana Coalition, I'm Jennifer Crockett, and this is Makin Energy, a podcast where we discuss the most important issues facing Louisiana's economic engine and working coast. 2023 marks a new stage of the oil and natural gas industry fueled by unprecedented American investments offshore and on land. It's an energy evolution.
I want a million kids doing STEM in the hope that one day they'll be one of the 14 million millionaires in the world or one of the 2,758 billionaires in the world.
The promise? American-made, reliable, clean, and affordable energy built on a mix of existing and emerging technologies. Louisiana is the key.
Our people feed and fuel this nation.
On this episode of Makin Energy, sustaining communities and captivating the workforce of tomorrow. Our first guest is Dr. Calvin Mackie, founder of STEM Global Action and STEM NOLA, a New Orleans-based nonprofit bringing science, technology, engineering, and math education to churches, community centers, and schools. Since its creation in 2013, STEM NOLA has impacted more than 80,000 students in the United States and internationally in 5 other countries. Dr. Mackie also hosts his own podcast, Let's Talk STEM, which we will link to in the episode description. STEM NOLA is also hosting us today. We are recording inside the STEM Global Action Studios. Dr. Mackie, thank you for hosting us for this part of today's podcast. Welcome to Makin Energy.
Hey, thank you for having me, and thank you for coming out to our humble abode.
Dr. Mackie, I've heard you compare our love of sports and kids' involvement in sports from a young age to what you say the buy-in for STEM should be. You've called it a cradle-to-career pipeline. Explain this comparison and how this can shape a young person's interest in STEM.
Definitely. You know, I grew up playing sports all my life. I played basketball all through high school. Just like many other kids, I thought I was going to go to NBA and save my family. But we live in a nation right now that makes sure every boy touches a football or basketball before the age of 4, and no one questions that. Our kids can go to school and be exposed to all of the sports in the world. And when they get out of school, you know, they have access to sports. As a matter of fact, if our kids are in elementary school and they're showing great potential in sports, major universities visit elementary schools and in the hope of getting an advantage over in the recruitment process such that when they do get to the 12th grade, they'll find themselves on their campus when they leave. They created a pathway for kids to pursue their passion in sports. Well, we need the same thing for STEM. At STEM Global Action and STEM NOLA, our goal is to make sure that every boy and girl, regardless of their background, their gender, or their socioeconomic background, touch STEM before the age of 4. So just like what we are doing in America for sports, that's what we need to be doing in STEM to solve the STEM talent pipeline problem.
And there's a bit of a reality check there too, right? Because compare the number of kids that are going to grow up to become professional athletes to the number of kids that can have real opportunity for a STEM career right here at home in Louisiana.
I keep telling people, I say my vision at STEM Global Action and STEM NOLA is to one day have 1 million kids doing STEM on weekends. And they say, why 1 million kids? I said, because in America on every weekend there's 1 million kids playing sports, hoping and believing and dreaming that one day there'll be one of 250 that get drafted and become millionaires. That one day there'll be one of the 60 that get drafted in basketball and become millionaires. One day there'll be that golfer or that tennis player that win that gold medal and become a millionaire. I want 1 million kids doing STEM in the hope that one day there'll be one of the 14 million millionaires in the world or one of the 2,758 billionaires in the world. So there's not even 5,000 athletes in the world, but yet and still there's over 14.4 millionaires. The last time I checked with my buddy over at Forbes.
Wow. Those are some stats. Well, to make that happen, STEM NOLA is in the process of creating this STEM district right here in New Orleans East. It's the first phase of a $100 million development at the long-shuttered Six Flags and Jazzland theme park. Now, Louisiana's energy industry is a big supporter of STEM NOLA and projects like the one that's happening right here, right now. So describe your partnership with the industry and their investment in a STEM-driven future, a real opportunity for Louisiana kids.
I'm a fisherman. You know, my team knows that, you know, Fridays are called Redfish Fridays. And they're happy when I can find a charter boat and go out because that means they don't have to deal with me. But the beautiful thing about going out on a boat is that I can see this industry in action. I mean, I could see the oil rigs, I could see the pipelines, I could see all of the apparatus needed to create this energy course. I used to be on the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority. I was on the Louisiana Recovery Authority. So I've had a long relationship engaging with the industry and its importance in the state of Louisiana. So when we start looking at educating our kids and educating our kids for the 21st century, it would be almost sacrilegious not to expose our kids to all of the possibilities right here before them. The industry has been, from day one, have been supporters of what we're doing. I mean, we have the power of chemistry. They've now for the last 10 years supported by Chevron. Chevron is one of our biggest supporters. We have 5 weeks of Tex Camp powered by Chevron. GROW has supported us. Every year we at the Louisiana Capital on Oil and Gas Day.
So talk about events like Chevron's STEM Zone recently at the French Quarter Fest and how that's making STEM more accessible.
So we believe wherever kids are, that's where we want to have STEM at. And one partner that we didn't talk about, the Port of New Orleans, I mean, that's a big part of the industry. We've done a buoyancy and density day, and the kids built boats and understood how boats play a big role in its entire industry. Then Chevron came and said, how about you all do STEM at the French Quarter Fest? And I was all in. Like this year, the kids built cannons with cups and balloons and ping pong balls, and these kids are walking around, shooting each other with the ping pong ball, but they're really demonstrating Newton's 4 laws of motion. And I mean, this was happening at the French Quarter Fest. And the parents had to drag the kids away because they wanted to make another cannon. And that's the way we create a pipeline of exposure and access for everybody, such that kids know this is for me and it's fun.
Many have said that we are on the cusp of the next great industrial revolution. You've said this on your podcast. When you talk to kindergartners, how do you describe the future of Louisiana's energy evolution and their role as future leaders in it?
We approach them where they are, and we give them things that otherwise would make sense to them. For energy, I mean, we have all these different demonstrations with kids to show them solar, to show them wind, to show them hydrogen, and how they could play a role of that in the future. And I said, look around, do you see any windmills? They say, no. Then they say, well, why we don't have windmills? I said, because we're waiting on you to build them. And that's how they can see themselves in the future. When we started STEM NOLA, my son, who was 9 years old at the time, in third grade, came to me and said, Daddy, I don't like science anymore. And he said, because the teacher just talked to the board. And that's how we got to going into the garage and doing all these hands-on activities. And I realized I saw the growth in my own son. But also what I saw was the neighborhood kids start coming around, and I started seeing the confidence that it built in them. From a little girl riding her bike down the street, right? And I realized, hey, we may have something for everybody. So what we're finding out now from teachers in schools is that kids who otherwise don't say anything, or kids who sit in the back of the room when the teacher mentions something, now their hand go up because they're confident, because they've experienced it before. They've had the exposure. And that's what STEM does for people. When you know you can do something, it builds your confidence, and especially for young women. The real question became, how do we marshal the human capital and the technical capital into communities, into places where it does not exist? And partnerships with the Shells, with the Chevrons, with the Port of New Orleans, with Bollinger's Shipyard. Those are the people that our kids need to see, touch, and feel. Because believe it or not, our children don't buy into careers. Children buy into people. And that's why in sports, they market people to them. They don't market the sport. The sport is just a vehicle. Be like Mike. They market the person. And in STEM, that's what we got to do.
And that exposure can make a real difference in opportunities for both the industry and young people.
People are coming back now that we had no clue that we touched. There's a young man who worked for Lockheed Martin building F-35 fighter jets. And he said, on that rocket day, I knew then. One young man got a job with Chevron at the event. I mean, the guy at Chevron talking to him, he was so impressed, they offered him a job. And he was working in a Pascagoula plant. We're almost one button away from being a recruitment firm for the industry. Where if kids are getting up at 8 in the morning on a Saturday to come work in the community, maybe that's the type of employee you're looking for. And those are the people that we are curating. And now we're telling the industry, look, this is here for you.
Dr. Mackie, Good conversation, good work in a
Thank you.
great environment. I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you all for all what you do, and thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting STEM NOLA.
Our next guest on this episode brings us from the classroom to the coast. Jennifer Armand is the executive director of the Bayou Community Foundation. It is the only charitable foundation solely focused on building and sustaining the communities of Lafourche Parish, Terrebonne Parish, and Grand Isle. Through generous partnerships and the power of people, Bayou Community Foundation has raised millions of dollars to bring service, education, rebuilding, and coastal preservation down the bayou. Jennifer, welcome to Makin Energy.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's delightful to be here.
The Bayou Community Foundation was started with a check and a challenge. The Gaines Foundation donated $500,000 to start the foundation and then prompted its founding members to raise $1 million in just 5 years. Well, you met that $1 million goal and have kept the foundation giving and growing for another 10 years and counting. Can you describe the work that you do with the Bayou Community Foundation in Lafourche Parish, Terrebonne Parish, and Grand Isle?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first, I want to salute those founding donors, the Gaines Foundation. Just a little bit about the background of Bayou Community Foundation and why starting that foundation was so important. While we are close geographically to New Orleans, we are worlds away when it comes to economy and our social and historic and ethnic fabric of our community. And our rural fishing communities along the bayous really suffered a lot, with little or no national or international philanthropic support for recovery, the way New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and other major metropolitan areas had. So after 2010, local stakeholders said, enough is enough. It's time for us to start our own philanthropic bucket, and that was the thrust behind Bayou Community Foundation.
And you all have found partners in the energy industry. Can you tell us how that has helped the Bayou Community Foundation grow and thrive?
Yes, absolutely. Over the years, particularly though, as COVID hit in 2020, and as Hurricane Ida, of course, made landfall right in our area on August 29, 2021, the energy industry really stepped up to the table and have been tremendous partners for us. Chevron, in particular, provided a $100,000 grant to us during COVID to help us make grants to nonprofits. And so we started our wonderful partnership with Chevron then, and then immediately after Ida, I received a call from our partners at the Chevron North Shore office saying, we would like to make a $500,000 contribution to your Bayou Recovery Fund. And we were just so ecstatic for that investment because of the power that philanthropy can have, particularly during disaster relief and recovery. And Chevron's gift was directly used to support students and teachers as we began to return to the classrooms late 2021. So many supplies lost, classroom equipment lost, and Chevron really stepped up and helped us fund grants to the Lafourche Education Foundation, Terrebonne Foundation for Academic Excellence, and Grand Isle School. In addition to Chevron, Shell, I can announce today, has made a $1 million contribution to Bayou Community Foundation to support our Bayou Recovery Funds. And I'm delighted to say that $300,000 of that $1 million gift will be used to support our Rebuild South Lafourche project, which is our housing recovery program, utilizing volunteer building groups from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, Amish volunteers who started already coming down here to help us with repairs. And we're excited to say that a group, MDS Storm Aid, who has been working with us in Dulac in Terrebonne Parish, will now be moving to South Lafourche in October, and we are planning to build up to 20 new homes in South Lafourche. So I want to thank Shell for that tremendous gift that helps us bring people back home to Bayou Lafourche.
$1 million. Is that the largest donation the Bayou Community Foundation has ever received?
It's the largest from energy companies. We have received similar gifts from private foundations, particularly those who live in our area. But we are delighted for this gift because I think they realize that the Bayou is not something we're just going to walk away from. Our people feed and fuel this nation. And if we don't have communities there to support this activity, then not only our community suffers, but the entire state and the entire nation. And we've been trying, as Bayou Community Foundation, to put a focus on the tremendous value of our small area, Lafourche, Terrebonne, and Grand Isle. But when you look at Port Fourchon, when you look at all of the support companies that work there, all the residents who work for these companies, as well as the majors that we've talked about already, Chevron and Shell and BP Amoco, the impact of our small community is really tremendous on this entire country.
We've talked about Shell stepping up in a big way with that $1 million donation just announced on this podcast to help rebuild more homes, and also Chevron's sustainability efforts in getting kids back into the classroom after Hurricane Ida and during the pandemic. But they are not alone in their support of the Bayou Community Foundation.
Yes, absolutely. First, I do want to share some love too, Jennifer. As I mentioned before, we have had a lot of oil and gas support companies that have come to the help of Bayou Community Foundation and Recovery and Rebuilding, as well as other majors. I do want to especially thank BP Amoco and Secor and Enbridge and TC Energy, and also our own Cenac Marine Services. In Houma, they have all been tremendous supporters as well. We are just delighted for everyone's partnership that has made this work. You mentioned education, and education is one of Bayou Community Foundation's 4 pillars of support for our grants program every year. So we just enjoy the support of Chevron and other energy companies who wish to fill the needs in the community that will ensure that they will continue to be able to operate in our community, to prosper, and that together we can feed and fuel this nation.
Thank you so much for being our guest today, Jennifer Armand with the Bayou Community Foundation.
Thank you very much.
Next time on Makin Energy.
The working coast to me is what Louisiana is. It's a way of life. It is our culture. It's the way we're all brought up. If you live in Louisiana, you have a connection to the coast. You either work there, you know people that work there, you depend on services that start there, and without the working coast, Louisiana would not be what it is.
Turning rigs into reefs to preserve Louisiana's working coast. That's on the next Makin Energy.